Hey guys, Future Barrett here. Like I said on the end of the last video, I decided to split this up into two different videos because it was too long. So the second video here is actually going to be more of question and answers and things that I get asked about the Raptor Liner. So we'll do that, then we'll get on to the prepping the car and painting the car. All right, so let's talk about colors. Like I already said, you can order like samples from Velocitint. You can go through those. You can choose whatever color you want. Even if they don't have it, you can get a tint somewhere else. But you can get about any color you want. But you have to remember when you're mixing it together, like if you go with a tint and you don't know exactly what it's going to look like, you're pretty much either stuck with it or you just wasted that quart of material, which is, you know, these kits are usually, it's $100 the first time I bought one. Now they're averaging, I think, like $120, $130. So that's a quarter of that just gone. So you usually pretty much stuck with it if whatever you mix up. So that's the reason I like the Velocitint. I know exactly what it's going to look like because I got the little card and it's sprayed with the Velocitint. But what I'm really trying to say here is, if you want to do it easy and quick, then what you want to do is you want to use something that's either your factory paint code or something very similar to your factory paint code where it's not going to notice, like when you open the doors and you got the door jambs, they'll be the same color, or under the hood or any of that stuff. So if you use a color close to your color, then it's going to be a lot easier. If you use a different color, like I did, I went from white to green. I didn't want the white to show up every time you open the door because that was going to look horrible. I wanted everything to look factory. So that kind of gets you into this whole, I have to take all the door sills out. I have to take the door panels off. I have to take the window sills out if I really want to do it right. I have to tape off the door jambs inside the car so you don't get paint inside the car whenever you're painting. So it adds a lot of work if you're wanting to change the color. If you want to go with a color that's very similar, a lot of people are like, I don't want to have to mess with a DMV. I've still not got that far because I just got this done. But you know, it's really not that big of a deal. I did, like when I did the Honda and I rebuilt it, I had to go in and get a new tag. I just told them it was a different color and they just done. All right, so what can you actually paint with the Raptor Liner? Let's talk about that. So almost anything on your car you'll be able to paint. So you can do the body with no issue. All you got to do is scuff it up first. We'll talk about those processes in a minute. So with the plastics, you have to go over it with an adhesion promoter first. So you just, it comes in a little spray can. You just spray it on there, a couple of coats, a few minutes right before you paint. And that should get the plastics pretty well. Obviously, all this you're going to clean and degrease it before you do any of this stuff that we're talking about. So I'm just kind of walking you through the very basics of what you'd have to think about and what you need to order. So you would need to order some adhesion promoter if you're going to do some plastics. This thing that you're not going to be able to paint on a car is going to be a chrome bumper or something like that. Now, on the 4Runner, I used the adhesion promoter. I went over it with some sandpaper. I was just trying to see what I could do there. But the rear bumper was chrome. Everything else was plastic. And I don't really think I'm going to have any issues anywhere other than that bumper. I think that it may peel off because really, in order to do chrome properly, you're either going to have to, number one, what I did on the trucks, just replace all the chrome parts with something else because it was easier and kind of freshened up and went with my look a little better. Or number two, you're going to have to sandblast it off. And that wasn't really something I wanted to get into. So I was actually looking for like some alloy wheels or something like that off of Marketplace. And I actually found some black wheels that were new and kind of on a blowout. So I went with those. I also changed my step bars to black step bars, and I also changed like my grill to a black plastic grill. So that's pretty much all I did there, just to get away from that whole having to sandblast the chrome. All right, the next question that I get a lot is, do you have to use primer? I do recommend it. You don't have to. There's three basic ways that people go around and they do this process in order to do a Raptor Liner paint job. Number one, the easiest way is they either go over it, and a lot of people, instead of like sanding, we use a nylon cut brush. I got a 6-inch one that I actually got on this big sander polisher from Harbor Freight that I found on the purple tag table. So I only got it for like 20 bucks. I think it's $30 normally, but it's been fine for this. So got a 6-inch nylon brush that I put on there, a cut brush, because all you want to do is go over it, and you just want to scuff the surface up and basically take the clear coat off. So a lot of people do that, and then anywhere that they get down to bare metal, they just use some self-etching primer. And for all intensive purposes, I think that that's probably going to be okay. But if I'm going to go through the trouble, I'm going to do it as well as I can to get the best adhesion that I can. So the next step, which is still not what I did, but it's a little bit more than that. So they go over it with the nylon cut brush and then clean it off. You know, you want to use degreaser. I use Purple Power. So you want to first wash the vehicle, degrease it, then do the cut brush. And I got some little cut brushes for like the drill to get inside the most of the door jams and stuff like that. And you can use just like a red scuffing pad as well for those areas that you can't get into. But I found the little ones on the drill. I got 99% of everywhere with that. But so you scuff it, and then a lot of these people, after they degrease it again, then they'll use what they call a seal coat. And so they take the Raptor liner and then they thin it down and spray it with an HVLP gun over top. You'd still want to use the self-etching primer if you did it this way on any bare metal areas, but they put that seal coat over the top, and supposedly that fills in a lot of like the pinholes and stuff like that and gives you better weather protection. I don't know, I've never did it that way. The way that I did it and the way that I recommend doing it is to just go ahead and use epoxy primer. Now, I really like the Raptor epoxy primer. There is one huge problem with it though, besides it being expensive. It's also hard to get delivered to your house and it not be damaged. So I have ordered 3 of these, and all 3 of them came with the lid messed up on the bucket, because it's just a regular 1-gallon paint pail. I think it's about 150 bucks from Amazon. I ordered 2 at one time, and one of them was like all the way spilled out in the box, spilled out all over my concrete on my patio under my porch, spilled out on everything else. And I did get a refund from Amazon, but they of course didn't cover any of the damage that they caused with the stuff all over my concrete. Now, that being said, you can get this as well as the Raptor from O'Reilly's. Is going to be the easiest place, but it is a little bit more expensive. But definitely, and I think what happens is, from what I've seen with the paint jugs, I think they're usually okay. And then what happens is that final delivery person like throws it down on the concrete, and then the lid comes off, because it's also like sideways, or it's usually in a big box, and it's not in like an individual 1-gallon paint size box. And so it can cause a lot of issues, is all I'm saying. I did order 1 more from Amazon. It also came, and the lid came off of it. But whenever I did that, I had somebody go out as soon as it was delivered. And again, it did open and was starting to leak a little bit. But we got the lid back on and fixed it before there was any like additional damage done from it. Now, the reason that I like the epoxy primer is, there's a couple, but the main one, number one, it's anti-corrosive, which I'm not even really getting into, so it's going to help fight against rust. But number 2, and the biggest thing for me, you spend all this time scuffing up the car, and for me, I was like, I want good protection, but I don't want to have to like scuff up the car again. Now, with that 6-inch cut brush, you can do 90% of the car in 20 minutes, but it takes a long time to get in those little areas. So with the epoxy primer, all I did was I got that Harbor Freight gun, and I went through a bunch of them, because I think I've had 3 or 4, because you go to clean that Harbor Freight gun, the gun works great, but you can't get the tip off to get it clean anymore. And so I tried and tried, and I just gave up on it. I mean, the guns are only, you know, like 20 bucks, so I just got to where I can get another one, use it for a one-time use, and it really makes me mad, but it's what I've been going with. But you drill the end of the hole out to make it like more at a 2mm tip, and we're going to cover that in a future video. But then you set your air compressor at 60 psi, and you go through and you paint everything after, of course, after the car is decreased, like we said. You can go through and you paint everything with that epoxy primer. Now, I did 2 coats of the epoxy primer, and the thing that I love about the epoxy primer is you have, I think it's 1 hour to 30 minutes an hour. I think it's an hour after you put it on. You can go ahead and coat it directly with the Raptor liner, or you have up to 7 days. So like you're going to do the primer today, and you're not going to start painting it till tomorrow, or it's Friday, you're going to not have time till Monday. You can go ahead and put that epoxy primer on there, and then you can just start painting right over the top of it whenever you get ready. Now for me, I liked it because of that 1 hour window. So, you know, I painted it, and then by the time I got everything cleaned and stuff, you're ready to start with the Raptor liner. Next question I get a lot is, does it have to have a rough texture? And you know, that's kind of a catch-22, because no, it doesn't have to. And even in the door jambs and stuff, which I did with the HVLP gun, just the regular spray gun, it's really smooth, but it's also not a scratch resistant. So some people do paint their whole cars with the HVLP gun, but from what I understand, they have more issues with scratching and stuff like that because it's not that thick, durable coat. Now, for me, what I chose to do is use the HVLP on the door jambs and stuff like that. And the issue with those is, I think it would have been okay with the same texture that I did on the body because it's not that much. But supposedly, if you have texture in the door jambs, it can hold those door seals apart and cause it to leak water and air and that kind of stuff. So just to be on the safe side, I just went ahead and used the HVLP gun. Now, what I use to paint the bodies on these is I use, number one, the first time that I ordered a Very gun, I got this cheap one. And the cheap one, it comes with some of the kits, is a Very gun. Don't use it. It's 100% garbage. What happens is the trigger, it's got a very small like pin behind it, and that pin comes off and goes side to side. I did the 4Runner with it, and I swear I'd never use one of those again, and I don't think that I have. Go ahead and spend the extra money if you don't want the thick coat. Now, if you want the thick, like full-on texture, it's going to come with a gun that's called a Schultz gun, and it's going to do great. But if you want to keep the texture down a little bit, which for me, I think my car is about like 100 grit sandpaper. It's still got some texture, but it's not like 40 grit sandpaper, which is what I would say like the regular gun you end up with. Now, with that, I ended up using the professional Very gun from Raptor, and it's not cheap, but you clean it out good. It works great. I did it, all of my textures on the bodies, you turn the end 2 rotations out, and then I did it at 60 psi. And so for me, that's worked great. All right, the next question I get a lot is, do you have to spray it in a paint booth? And the answer is no. A lot of people, like myself, just sprayed it outside. When I did the truck, it was actually an issue because it was getting to be like October and fall time and leaves. So I did hang a tarp over the truck just to catch the leaves and stuff, which was very beneficial because it was a pretty big issue with the leaves falling down before I got done. As far as being outside, none of these projects seem to be hurt like without being in a spray booth. Some people get like the 20-foot Harbor Freight like portable awning and do it underneath that. But you know, all in all, I think that it came out really good for just being outside and garage type setup. You know, I was 100% out and open. I just had the tarp over me. And it's kind of weird because even like when I did the Honda, and I did it at night, so the one thing that can mess with you a lot is like humidity, if it's real humid or hot. And so I was doing it at night.
Do not forget to hit that subscribe button.